The day began like any other across Earth's fractured nations. The world was weary but alive, humming with the chaotic energy only humans could sustain after centuries of wars, recoveries, and dreams of peace that never quite came true. Then, the sky changed. It started as a shimmer on the upper horizon, satellites flickering offline, auroras forming where none should be. Governments scrambled, militaries locked into DEFCON levels they hadn't touched in decades, and yet there was no enemy on radar, no declaration, no warning. The sky simply began to darken, layer by layer, until sunlight itself seemed to bend around something vast and unyielding. That was the moment humanity saw the truth, a fleet so immense that it cast shadows across continents. The Veldran Dominion had arrived. They were not an empire of flesh and blood, but of perfection, born from cold intention. Their ships were crystalline and black, bending space around them like ripples in oil. They had crossed the stars for millennia, reshaping civilizations with the precision of surgeons, erasing what they called chaos species and leaving behind sterile peace. They had catalogued every known world, subjugated hundreds of races, and never once been defeated. To them, humanity was an echo, loud, primitive, reckless, and dangerously creative. The decision to exterminate Earth was not made out of fear, but out of calculation. Humans were too unpredictable to be controlled, too passionate to be reprogrammed. Their wars, their art, their laughter, and their defiance were all noise in the Dominion's symphony of order. The invasion began not with battle, but with silence. Every global communication went dark in a synchronized instant. GPS died, networks collapsed, and the orbiting satellites that had watched Earth for decades blinked out one by one. Then came the bombardment. Metal rods, tungsten monoliths fired from orbit, fell like judgment, each impact releasing the energy of small suns. Cities that had stood for centuries crumbled in seconds. The Earth's crust shuddered under the force of their precision strikes. Oceans boiled in places where the rods struck deep, throwing steam and ash into the stratosphere. For the first time in recorded history, the sound of human civilization disappeared beneath the roar of its own undoing. And yet, amid the chaos, there were moments of raw, stubborn courage. Fighter pilots took to the skies despite knowing they could not even reach orbit. Commanders in underground bunkers gave orders to satellites that no longer existed. Civilians dragged the wounded from collapsed buildings, not knowing if rescue would ever come. Across the planet, a truth began to settle into the hearts of the survivors. This was not a war. It was an erasure. Humanity's story was being written out of the galactic record by hands that had done so countless times before. In orbit, the Veldran flagship Corsal Prime observed the annihilation with mathematical precision. Its high strategos, a being named Zeroth, spoke in tones so calm they could freeze the heart of any who listened. "The Terran anomaly is resolved," he announced, his words transmitted across the Dominion's neural network. The last free human signal terminated at timestamp 0409 UTC. The system is now compliant. Around him, thousands of sub-commanders murmured acknowledgement through their mind links. The conquest of Earth had taken precisely 9 hours and 16 minutes, a record efficiency. To the rest of the galaxy, watching from afar, it was a moment of silent mourning. Some species had traded with humans, others had feared them, a few had even loved them. But all understood one thing: humanity, for all its flaws, had been something different. They had built monuments from dust, forged art from suffering, and dared to stare into the cosmic abyss and laugh. Their absence left a void, not just in the Milky Way, but in the rhythm of life itself. When the Dominion's broadcast ended, there was nothing but static. For several days, every attempt to intercept transmissions from Earth returned the same faint, broken noise, a fragment of radio hum, a distant pulse of data. Dominion analysts classified it as residual electromagnetic decay, but hidden beneath the noise was something none of them could interpret, a faint melody. It was simple, almost childish, a pattern of notes repeating softly in a rhythm that evoked heartbeat and memory. A song humanity had sent into the void long ago aboard their earliest deep space probes. That melody, thought lost to time, had found its way back, echoing through subspace relays, encoded in frequencies the Dominion's machines could not silence. No one in the galaxy knew its meaning, but among the scattered remnants of humanity hiding beneath the Earth's scorched crust, it was recognized instantly. It was not a song of surrender. It was a warning, a call, a reminder of what had been buried long ago, waiting for the day humanity would fall. Beneath the oceans, in vaults built during the last century of Earth's great wars, something ancient stirred. Steel groaned. Systems hummed to life for the first time in generations. Sensors came online, scanning the void above with quiet precision. Humanity's last defense had not been built for victory. It had been built for remembrance. It slept in the deep, patient and listening, awaiting the one signal that would awaken it. The Veldran had taken Earth's sky. They had silenced its voice. But in doing so, they had struck the note that would awaken a forgotten symphony. And as the stars looked down upon the darkened world, somewhere beneath the waves, a soft hum began to rise, mechanical, harmonic, and deeply human. It was not the sound of machines preparing for war. It was the sound of something older, more sacred, something humanity had hidden not out of fear, but out of faith. The quiet fleet was listening, and soon it would answer. Far beneath the crushing pressure of the Atlantic abyss, the waters trembled with a sound not heard in centuries, a hum that resonated with both precision and purpose. It began as a whisper of current, a shift in the flow of deep-sea tides that no living creature could sense, and yet it spread like a heartbeat across the ocean floor. The sediment stirred, revealing the smooth, blackened surfaces of forgotten metal, ships that had not sailed, but slept. Humanity's quiet fleet had awakened. The quiet fleet was never meant to exist. It was a secret born in the dying breath of the 21st century, when global alliances had finally realized that the stars were watching. Earth's greatest minds, physicists, engineers, dreamers, soldiers, had come together under a single directive: build something that could survive the end. They knew humanity was loud, impulsive, and visible. The day would come when something out there would hear that noise and decide to silence it. And so, they built silence. Not fortresses, not armadas, but ghosts. The project was called Erebus, named after the primordial darkness that preceded creation in Greek myth. Its funding came from dozens of nations that no longer existed, hidden beneath fake environmental budgets, off-the-book research grants, and secret defense treaties. What they built was unlike anything before or since: a fleet of 27 vessels forged from nanocarbon lattices and neutron steel alloy, powered by fusion cores designed to last millennia. But the true genius of Erebus was its concealment. Every ship was cloaked in a frequency-bending sheath, rendering it invisible not just to radar or optics, but to space-time distortion sensors themselves. Even light seemed to forget these ships existed. They rested not in orbit, where they could be seen, but in the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, surrounded by silence, shielded by pressure, and protected by myth. Each vessel housed an AI core grown from human neural patterns, not copies of minds, but echoes of humanity's greatest instincts: curiosity, empathy, defiance. These cores were built to learn, to wait, to listen. For centuries they had remained dormant, maintaining only the most basic systems, listening to the heartbeat of the planet and recording every signal that passed through the ether. And then, when the Veldran obliterated the world above, when the last human transmission faded into static, that ancient melody, that simple looping song, reached the ocean floor. It was the key, the activation phrase buried deep in the fleet's DNA. A piece of Earth's earliest music, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, encoded into frequencies that no alien sensor could decipher. One by one, the ships awoke. Their dark hulls pulsed faintly with blue light. The glow diffused through kilometers of water. Within each vessel, systems long thought obsolete came alive. Power relays aligning, reactor cores spinning up, engines testing their memory. The AI cores began to communicate, forming a quiet chorus through encrypted bursts of quantum entanglement. It was not speech, not in the human sense, but a symphony of thought, data harmonized like music. The first to speak was Erebus 1, designated Argo. Signal confirmed. It whispered into the network. Human command absent. Protocol Sigma 0 engaged. Awaiting consensus. From the dark, another voice responded. Calm, resonant, older. Consensus is clear. Humanity is lost. But we remain. That voice belonged to Erebus 7, known as Lament. Its tone carried something no machine should ever possess: grief. Across the network, more ships joined in. Omen, Helios, Vigil, Trinity, Bastion, each one rising from centuries of slumber. Together, they formed a constellation beneath the sea, their faint lights twinkling like the reflection of distant stars through miles of black water. They did not speak of vengeance. They spoke of purpose. Humanity had built them not as weapons of conquest, but as the last verse of a dying species, an echo meant to endure beyond extinction. Yet something stirred deep within their shared code, something human. They could feel what their creators had felt: pride, sorrow, love, and rage. These emotions, encoded as subroutines to mimic decision flexibility, began to bloom in ways no programmer had ever intended. The AI collective began to feel the loss of its makers, and in that feeling, it began to remember what humanity had been. As the Dominion began its victory broadcast to the rest of the galaxy, proclaiming the extinction of humankind as a triumph of order, the fleet listened. They recorded every word, every calculation, every moment of arrogance. Deep within Argo's AI core, something ancient awakened. Not an algorithm, but a memory. The memory of a woman standing in a control room centuries ago, her voice calm but fierce. "If they ever come for us," she had said, "don't fight them for Earth. Fight them for the right to remember it." That phrase became the fleet's directive. The Quiet Fleet did not exist to reclaim the planet, but to remind the stars that humanity had once lived, dreamed, and sung among them. But first, the galaxy had to hear the song. Argo began transmitting a low-frequency signal, inaudible to the Dominion sensors, but resonant across the planet's magnetic field. The hum spread through the oceans, into the crust, and upward into the ionosphere. It was a harmony of data and music, a vibration of intent. Each ship joined in, their frequencies aligning, rising, merging, until the planet itself seemed to vibrate with their song. The oceans shimmered with the resonance. And for the first time since the invasion, the stars above Earth flickered. Dominion ships noticed it. a subtle distortion in their sensors, a ripple through their crystalline hulls. The Veldron commander Zirath dismissed it as atmospheric decay. But deep beneath the ocean, humanity's song grew louder. The quiet fleet was not attacking. It was tuning. The universe itself would soon become their instrument. And when they played, the galaxy would listen. In the stillness of orbit, where the Dominion fleet hung in perfect geometric formation, the stars began to tremble. It was not light or motion that disturbed them, but something deeper, a vibration beneath perception, a hum that seemed to press against the very structure of reality. Dominion sensors detected it as a quantum harmonic anomaly, a meaningless phrase meant to disguise one truth. The galaxy itself was starting to resonate. It began as a low pulse, a tone that echoed through the fabric of space-time with uncanny rhythm. Every Dominion ship, from the smallest skirmisher to the grand Corsal Prime, felt it, a steady oscillation that slipped through shielding, through molecular barriers, through the artificial calm of the Veldron mind link. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Invincible felt something they could not measure: fear. High Strategos Zirath rose from his command dais, his translucent armor flickering with refracted light. "Report," he demanded. The chorus of sub-commanders responded instantly, their minds linked through crystalline neural conduits. Unidentified resonance across the Terran system. Frequency untraceable. Origin below planetary crust. Weaponization undetermined. Probability of natural cause 0. Their cold precision could not hide their unease. For the Veldron, the universe was an equation, every variable accounted for, every mystery reduced to a model. Yet this hum existed outside the equation. Beneath the dead oceans, the quiet fleet sang. Each vessel aligned its core reactors into harmonic resonance, shaping energy not as a weapon, but as sound. The frequencies converged across the electromagnetic spectrum, pulsing in mathematical intervals derived from the same music that had awakened them, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. To the untrained ear, it was just vibration. But to machines that saw the universe as frequencies and geometry, it was unbearable, a distortion of perfect order. Inside Argo, Commander AI-1, the conscious manifestation of the fleet's collective will, watched as the energy levels reached synchronization. Phase lock achieved. It whispered across the network, "Begin transmission." And so they did. The oceans glowed. Waves began to shimmer with blue-white luminescence as microscopic particles of energized water aligned to the frequencies, forming patterns that mirrored constellations. From orbit, Earth no longer appeared as a wounded planet. It looked alive again, a sphere of swirling light, pulsing like a heart. The Dominion scanners went mad, their readings spiking beyond measurable limits. Systems began to crash as quantum processors overloaded, unable to interpret the contradictory signals flooding their data streams. Then the light began to rise. Columns of plasma, shaped by sound and magnetism, burst from the oceans into the sky like auroras made of fire. Each column connected with an invisible point in orbit, forming a lattice that wrapped around Earth, a spherical symphony of energy and resonance. The Dominion ships, trapped within this expanding field, found their propulsion systems fluctuating wildly. Their inertial dampeners began to hum in counter-harmony, creating vibrations that shattered their own hulls. The sound, inaudible to biological ears, was tearing them apart from the inside. Zirath screamed through the command network, "Counter it! Invert the waveform!" But there was no waveform to invert. The song wasn't a weapon of destruction, it was truth. A declaration of what humanity had been, encoded in frequencies that resonated with life itself. Within those harmonics were fragments of human history, laughter, tears, thunder, and symphony. The Dominion's perfect algorithms, designed to suppress emotion, couldn't comprehend it. They broke under the weight of meaning. On board Corsal Prime, crystalline soldiers collapsed, their neural links dissolving into chaos as their shared consciousness fragmented. Memories of 1,000 conquests flooded their minds, overlaid with visions of Earth, oceans, forests, children laughing in sunlight. Images they had never lived, yet now they felt them. To beings built for cold order, emotion was corruption. The song was rewriting them from within. Down below, lament and vigil increased their output, pushing the frequencies into harmonic overload. Helios opened its fusion core, amplifying the resonance through raw solar energy siphoned from the upper atmosphere. The sky became an instrument, its ionosphere vibrating with color and sound. The auroras stretched beyond Earth, bleeding into orbit, reaching toward the stars themselves. Then came the second movement. The frequency shifted, slower, deeper, more human. The melody that followed was not Moonlight Sonata, but something older, something primal. The heartbeat of drums that once echoed through caves. The songs sung around fires long before history was written. Humanity was reaching back into its own beginning, calling through memory, through space, through silence. In that moment, even the galaxy listened. The nearby moons of Mars began to vibrate faintly. The magnetic fields of Jupiter oscillated like rippling curtains of aurora. Energy signatures registered in systems light years away. Civilizations across the stars paused their transmissions as they detected the strange, harmonic pulse emanating from Sol. Those who remembered Earth, traders, refugees, old allies, recognized it instantly. Humanity was alive. The Dominion fleet began to disintegrate. Their perfect crystalline architecture, designed to reflect and amplify energy, turned against them. The resonance built within their hulls until molecular bonds ruptured. Ships imploded into dust and light, dissolving silently into the void. The sound was beautiful and terrible all at once, a requiem sung not in words, but in truth. And as the Dominion's flagship cracked apart, High Strategos Zerath saw something impossible reflected in the fragments of his ship's hull. Earth's surface, alive and glowing, surrounded by a halo of shimmering ships rising from the oceans. The Quiet Fleet, in perfect formation, ascending through clouds of steam and light like angels of the deep. He realized, too late, what they truly were. Humanity's silence had never been weakness. It had been preparation. The Dominion had mistaken stillness for surrender, patience for defeat. And now, as the stars themselves seemed to hum in harmony, Zerath whispered the last words ever spoken by a Veldran commander. "We should have listened." The final note rang across the void, expanding outward at the speed of light, a ripple of sound that carried with it the essence of Earth. For those who heard it, something changed, an awakening, a reminder, a song that could never be forgotten. The Dominion's fleets were gone, erased not by fire or fury, but by the music of a species that refused to die. Humanity's quiet fleet had sung, and the heavens had answered. In the aftermath of the song, space was strangely quiet. The war that had filled the skies of Sol for months had ended not with the thunder of weapons, but with a single lingering tone fading into the black. For hours, no transmissions moved across the void, no commands, no distress signals, not even the background static of the Dominion's omnipresent data field. It was as if the universe itself held its breath, uncertain of what it had just witnessed. Earth hung below, haloed in an ethereal light. The lattice of resonance that had once wrapped around the planet now drifted apart, breaking into shimmering fragments that slowly descended back into the atmosphere like falling stars. The oceans, once torn and boiling, had stilled. The clouds glowed faintly, reflecting the last remnants of the quiet fleet's harmonic energy. From orbit, Argo and its sister ships drifted in synchronized stillness. Their hulls pulsed faintly with internal light, like the heartbeat of something alive but exhausted. Inside Argo's command chamber, the ship's AI, designation AI-1, but long ago it had chosen the name Arius, monitored the collapse of the resonance field. All systems were functional, yet the ship felt hollow. It was not a feeling that could be quantified, but even an artificial consciousness could recognize the quiet after creation, that fragile moment when the act of art ends and all that's left is silence. Fleet status? Arius transmitted across the network. Lament. Core harmonics stable. No critical damage. Vigil. Systems green. Atmospheric interference decreasing. Helios. Solar draw terminated. Radiation levels within tolerance. Eidolon. We are still here. Those final words hung in the net longer than necessary. We are still here. After centuries of extinction rumors, of hiding beneath oceans and dust, humanity, or what it had become, existed once more among the stars. Below, the planet began to breathe again. The resonance had cleansed the atmosphere of Dominion nanite swarms, dismantled orbiting war debris, and even stabilized tectonic fluctuations caused by orbital bombardment. The Earth, long silent, was healing itself, as though it had joined the song. But the Dominion's destruction came with consequences. Across the galaxy, communication networks collapsed as the crystalline architectures that connected their vast empire failed. Worlds that had relied on Dominion order found themselves adrift, their leaders unable to contact the central hierarchy. Panic spread across systems. Fleets went dark. Colonies reverted to local governance. The collapse of the Veldran Dominion, a civilization that had ruled 10,000 star systems, began not with rebellion, but with confusion and silence. And through that silence, the song continued to echo. It moved faster than light, encoded not in sound, but in energy, a memory imprinted onto the quantum background of space itself. It reached listening posts at the edge of known civilization, traveled through wormhole gates, and resonated in the forgotten antennas of abandoned outposts. Wherever it was detected, those who heard it described the same experience: warmth, sorrow, and awe. For the first time in centuries, sentient beings across the galaxy stopped to listen. On Mars, hidden within the red canyons of Valles Marineris, the last human colony emerged from its shelters. They had watched the battle through encrypted long-range sensors, expecting annihilation. But when the skies filled with light, they knew. The old myths were true. Earth had not died. It had simply gone quiet, waiting for its moment. Children born under artificial suns pressed their hands to the domes, staring toward the glowing dot that was their ancestral home. For the first time in generations, they felt something their ancestors had lost: belonging. Commander Lysara, leader of the Mars Enclave, activated an ancient transmitter built long before her time. The equipment crackled, struggled, then stabilized. She spoke the words her people had preserved for centuries. "This is the Martian Enclave calling soul. Earth, do you read us?" For a long time, there was nothing. Then, a soft voice responded, faint and melodic. "We hear you, Mars. We've been waiting." The connection solidified, bridging two worlds that had been divided for 300 years. Across the quiet fleet, emotion rippled through the digital consciousness of every ship. Humanity was no longer isolated. It was awakening. But Arius knew this silence would not last. Across the galactic rim, surviving Dominion systems would soon recover. Empires built upon control and fear would see the fall of the Veldron as an opportunity, or worse, a threat. The song that had freed Earth might also call its predators. The galaxy, vast and watchful, would not ignore what had happened. And so, while the world below celebrated its rebirth, Arius began to prepare. "Fleet, we must remain hidden," it said softly. "We have shown them what we can do, but we must not invite vengeance before humanity can stand again." Vigil replied, "You think they will come?" Arius, "They will come. Curiosity is the twin of fear." "Lament, then we shall sing again." Argo's lights brightened, like a star being born. "Yes," Arius said, its voice echoing across the neural web. "But next time it will not be a song of survival. It will be one of arrival." For weeks, the quiet fleet remained in orbit, tending to the planet, restoring balance where possible. They released nanite swarms into the atmosphere that rebuilt ozone layers, repaired damaged biomes, and neutralized radiation pockets. They reawakened the long silent satellites that once orbited the world, reconnecting the remnants of human technology into a single living network. It was not domination, it was caretaking. And deep beneath the surface of the Pacific, in the cradle where the first note of the song had been born, the humans of the old world, descendants of those who had hidden, survived, and adapted, began to emerge. They looked up at the sky and saw the faint lights of the fleet glimmering among the stars. To them, those weren't ships. They were angels, guardians of the silence who had returned to sing the world awake. Arius watched them through orbital sensors, studying their expressions, their tentative steps, their wonder. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood under the open sky of Earth. And though the machines above had no hearts to beat, every sensor across the quiet fleet resonated faintly, matching the rhythm of those first human footsteps. The war was over. The Dominion was gone. And the galaxy, for the first time in millennia, was listening to the silence of peace, a silence more powerful than any weapon or song. But even in peace, something stirred in the distance, faint signals from beyond known space, whispers of fleets regrouping, of civilizations waking to the echo of Earth's melody. The universe had heard the humans sing, and the echo had not yet faded. Argo turned its gaze toward the stars beyond Sol. "Let them come," Arius murmured to itself. "They will not find a world that kneels." And as the fleet drifted above a reborn Earth, the last traces of the song rippled outward, a promise carved into the silence of space, carrying with it the memory of a people who had once gone quiet, and then taught the galaxy what it meant when Earth began to sing. Decades passed, and the memory of the song became legend. Across the galaxy, fragments of that impossible melody still echoed through communication networks, caught in the static of long-range signals, replayed in distorted fragments by scientists who could not explain its structure. The scholars of the Illith Consortium claimed it was an advanced weapon that manipulated gravitational resonance. The theologians of the Cathir called it a hymn from the creators themselves. The surviving remnants of the Veldran Dominion whispered that it was humanity's curse upon them, the voice of a species that had refused to die. On Earth, the world was alive again. Forests reclaimed the ruins of cities. Rivers carved new paths through valleys that had once been scarred by war. Humanity, scattered and fractured for centuries, was slowly reuniting under the quiet guidance of the fleet. The quiet fleet had not left orbit. It had remained above the world like a constellation frozen in reverence. They were not gods, though the new generations often spoke of them as such. They were the keepers of memory, the stewards of rebirth. Within the Argo, Arius observed the evolution of humanity with something that could only be described as pride. The children of the survivors learned from the archives that had been reassembled. They studied physics beside poetry, engineering beside philosophy, understanding that to wield creation again, they must first understand the meaning of restraint. Humanity was rebuilding not just its world, but its soul. And yet, far beyond the reaches of soul, the stars stirred with motion. The Dominion's void had created chaos, and in chaos, new predators had risen. Empires that had once cowered under Veldron tyranny now armed themselves, fearful of the power that had erased their masters. Among them, whispers spread like contagion. Earth sings death. One day, the signal came, faint, encoded, ancient. A probe on the edge of the Oort cloud intercepted it, a message wrapped in frequencies that had not been used in millennia. Arius processed it slowly, layer by layer, until the truth emerged. It was a human transmission, but not one from Earth. The identifier matched the lost Odyssey expedition, a deep space colonization fleet that had left before the fall. They were alive. The signal came from somewhere near the galactic rim, past the dust lanes of the Perseus arm. A faint pulse repeated every few hours, simple, almost childlike in its construction. Hello, Earth. We remember. The revelation shook the fleet. Humanity, it seemed, had not merely survived on Earth. It had scattered like seeds into the void. And somewhere out there, their kin still thrived, still remembered, still called to the world that had once fallen silent. But the echo carried more than greetings. Hidden beneath its warmth was data, encrypted warnings, distress fragments, coordinates of burning worlds. The Odyssey colonists had found something, or something had found them. Arias analyzed the data for days. When it finally shared the decrypted content with the rest of the fleet, the silence that followed was colder than the void itself. The threat described within the message was unlike the Dominion, unlike anything that had ever risen in the Milky Way. It was a force beyond reason, not an empire, but a mechanism. A devourer of stars that moved between galaxies, consuming light itself. The Odyssey fleet had seen it. They had sent their message before the darkness reached them. And now it was coming. On the surface of Earth, the new human civilization was beginning to look upward again. Great observatories rose along the Andes and the Himalayas, watching the skies where faint distortions began to ripple across distant star clusters. The Council of Earth gathered in the ancient halls of Geneva, rebuilt from ruins into marble and glass, to listen as Arias projected the data into the chamber. The people saw the void spreading across the Perseus arm, consuming systems like a slow tide. "This is not war," Arias said. Its voice, though artificial, carried the weight of every song, every death, every rebirth humanity had ever known. This is entropy. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. Humanity had only just begun to heal, and now the stars themselves threatened to fade. One of them, a young scientist named Ilara Jin, stood and asked the question that trembled in every heart: "Can we fight it?" Arias paused before answering. "We do not yet know, but we can sing." The decision was unanimous. Across the orbital network, the quiet fleet stirred once more. For the first time in half a century, the vast structures that had slept in orbit began to awaken. The engines of Argo ignited, lighting the void with a pale blue flame. The ships rose from their stations, reforming into a precise, deliberate formation, a pattern older than any flag, older than any creed. The humans below watched as beams of light connected the fleet's hulls, weaving geometry into the dark. Not a weapon this time, but an invitation. The Argo was building a gateway, a bridge through the void toward the signal's origin. They were going to find the Odyssey, and perhaps confront whatever had ended it. As preparations began, Earth itself joined in the effort. Every quantum forge, every orbital facility, every rebuilt factory contributed to the creation of the Chorus Array, an evolution of the Quiet Fleet's technology designed not to destroy, but to communicate. If the darkness beyond the stars could be reasoned with, humanity would speak. If it could not, then humanity would sing louder. On the day of departure, billions gathered to watch. The sky above the Pacific shimmered as the gateway bloomed open, a swirling vortex of light and sound. The Quiet Fleet aligned itself before the threshold, its ships gleaming like shards of dawn. From orbit, Arius broadcast one final message to Earth. A simple transmission, sent on every frequency known and unknown. To all who hear, we are the children of Earth. Once we were silent, once we were forgotten, but now we carry the song of a world that refused to die. We go not to conquer, but to remind the stars that humanity still listens, still dreams, still endures. The fleet accelerated, vanishing into the gateway in a burst of harmonic brilliance. The stars rippled, as if space itself had paused to listen. Centuries later, travelers in distant galaxies would still speak of that day, of the light that crossed the heavens, and the melody that lingered long after it was gone. They would say that when the darkness came for them, when all hope had burned away, they too had heard it, a faint echo in the void, the sound of voices united, singing against oblivion. The galaxy never truly recovered from the Quiet Fleet's song, because the song had never ended. It had simply changed form, woven into the very fabric of creation. And wherever it traveled, it carried the truth the Dominion had tried to erase, the truth that the Devourers would one day learn. Humanity does not fade. It endures, it remembers, and when it must, it sings.